Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're discussing Eli Heidenreich, running back slash wide receiver out of Navy. They don't run a traditional offense, so breaking him down is going to be a little bit different. In that, once again, he's not necessarily a running back or wide receiver at times. So we're going to get into some of his production profile, his injury history, his offensive line play. Take a look at his production against ranked competition. Take a look at some advanced stats of his. Take a look at some interesting tidbits I found on X. Take a look at some highlights. I was unable to find any all-22 film on him because it's Navy. Then take a look at his strengths and weaknesses, his projected draft capital. Take a look at a couple of potential team fits. And finally, what we might be able to expect out of him in fantasy. So watch to the end of this video and you should have a pretty good idea. Getting into his athleticism, once again, he tested as a running back at the combine. He ran a 4.44 in the 40-yard dash time, which is 90th percentile, to go along with a 101.4 speed score, which is 71st percentile, a 120.4 burst score, which is 59th percentile, a 10.77 agility score, which is 98th percentile. That is extremely impressive, and 16 bench reps, which is 20th percentile. Now, getting into his BMI, his height and weight, he's 5'11", 197 pounds. Now, if he were to be a wide receiver, that is a perfectly reasonable height and weight. You know, for instance, Chase and Neighbors are 6 foot 200 pounds. So you'd just be an inch under that and a couple pounds lighter. So that is a 27.5 BMI, which for a running back isn't very good. I know Player Profiler, for whatever reason, has it listed as 75th percentile. There's no way that's right. That's extremely light if you're going to be a running back. That's potentially a wide receiver percentile that they have under there by mistake, I'd imagine. But in terms of the college in which he went to Navy once again. He's going to be 24.8 right now, so going to be 25 in his rookie season. So an older prospect. Now, taking a look at some other interesting stats here, his collegiate dominator rating, which is market share of the total yards and touchdowns of his offense, of 21.8 is 47th percentile. Solid number there. 6.5 career college yards per carry is 85th percentile. Once again, I'll get into the offense in which they run and why it's a little bit deceptive, but that's once again a solid number in and of itself. And then once again, he was a lot of the time a receiver, but also did play running back. So he had a 44.5 collegiate target share, which is 100th percentile. It's a little bit deceiving because he wasn't purely a running back. He was running routes down the field, which I'll show you in some of the highlights later. But just to contextualize that, it's not as if he was just a pure running back getting a 44.5% target share. That would be completely unheard of. Getting into his production profile, once again, he played a lot of wide receiver and he played some running back as well. So I did find it interesting that he didn't test as a wide receiver and he tested as a running back. I do think he has a ridiculous skill set, though. I'm taking a look at his first season in 2023 where he played for Navy. 27 rush attempts, 214 rushing yards, a 7.9 yards per attempt is crazy. 1 touchdown, 1 fumble. Then 83.5 PFF rush grade for him to go along with 34 targets, 19 receptions, 382 receiving yards at 20.1 yards per reception. That's bonkers. 4 receiving touchdowns and an 80.2 PFF receiving grade. Then stepped up in a big way from year 1 to year 2 at Navy, posting 65 rush attempts, 444 rush yards, 6.8 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no fumbles, 82.6 PFF rush grade. Then through the air, 59 targets, 39 receptions, 671 receiving yards at 17.2 yards per reception, 6 receiving touchdowns, and a 94.5 PFF receiving grade. Then stepped up even further from his second season to his third season, posting 77 attempts, 499 rush yards, 6.5 yards per attempt was the worst of his career. But with more volume, you generally see a little bit of a depression in efficiency. But to clear 6.5 yards per attempt in all the seasons is a bonkers number, in my opinion, for somebody that's hardly talked about. 3 rushing touchdowns, no fumbles, and an 86.1 PFF rush grade, which was a career best. Then through the air, 79 targets, 51 receptions, 941 receiving yards at 18.5 yards per reception. So he cleared 17.2 yards per reception in each of his 3 seasons playing there, and 6 receiving touchdowns for the second consecutive season. And for the second consecutive season, a 94.5 PFF receiving grade. These stats are bonkers. Taking a look at his injury history, there is a red flag here, but overall, I wouldn't describe his injury history as extensive necessarily. Did suffer an ACL tear in 2022, that's why he didn't produce for us, but did return once again in 2023. But then after that initial ACL tear, no injuries reported until 2025 when he apparently had some hamstring injuries. And then he was listed as questionable to play against Memphis due to an undisclosed injury. Overall, it is a red flag to have the ACL tear, but he hasn't been seriously injured since then, and went years without having a reported injury. So overall, I wouldn't describe his injury history as dramatically worrisome or anything. But to be fair, one ACL tear is a red flag. But once again, it's been years with no serious injury since then. So I'm going to let him slide for sure as far as being too worried about his injury history. Now, taking a look at his situation, he actually did receive the 28th best PFF pass grade in terms of the quarterback play from Navy this past season per PFF. But taking a look at his offensive line play, they ranked 37th in the nation with a 90.1. So overall, his offensive environment was pretty good and conducive to success for him. So that didn't hinder his production in any way, shape, or form. Taking a look at his play against ranked competition, he only had 2 games against ranked competition. As you can see, he dominated in a previous game with 8 receptions, 243 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. But taking a look at his first game against ranked competition against number 10 at the time, Notre Dame, in a loss, 2 receptions for 20 yards and 1 rush for 15 yards. Definitely was limited in that game. I'm presuming that they paid a lot of offensive or defensive attention to him as a receiver and got out to a lead, and that's probably would be why he didn't really receive too much work on the ground. But taking a look at his next game against number 24 USF in a win, 5 receptions, 146 yards with a long of 82 and no touchdown, then 6 rushes for 39 yards and no touchdown on the ground. Overall, one game in which he was essentially erased from the game, and another game in which he pretty much dominated against USF. Now, taking a look at his advanced stats here. So once again, he didn't receive a ton of work on the ground, but he is coming out as a running back. And so I've contextualized these stats by having a sample size with running backs in particular. But once again, he at times was a full-time wide receiver as well, playing multiple spots across the formation. So he once again, he is kind of a one-of-one player here, at least as far as there's just really not too many other players that could compare to him in his usage. But I took a look at FBS running backs with 40 or more targets. That was a sample size of 26 players here. Heidenreich ran 199 routes, which is 93.0% of the team routes. Now, in terms of his deployment, this was as a wide receiver. He played in the slot 22.9% of the time, out wide 45.8% of the time, and inline 8.4% of the time. So interesting usage that's really not generally replicated by too many collegiate prospects. His yards per out run of 4.73 was first by around 200% among these collegiate running backs, which isn't really fair because they weren't used or they don't have the skill set to generally be boundary receivers and slot receivers and be used inline as well. He is a very rare type of player. But taking a look at his first downs per out run, his 0.18 was easily first, significantly better than any one of these other running backs. But once again, he's also kind of a wide receiver at the same time. His YAC per reception of 7.1 was tied for 20th, though. His missed tackles forced in total of 8 was tied for 18th. In terms of contested catches, he can make contested catches down the field, one-handed catches as well. Very impressive player. His 72.2% is ludicrous, 13 out of 18. And once again, he's running routes deep down the field. Remember his yards per reception numbers? The worst he had was over 17 yards per reception on pretty good volume. Taking a look at his targets, his 79 at 6.1 per game are solid. 51 receptions at 3.9 per game. Receiving yards, 941 at 72.4 per game. And 9 total touchdowns at 0.7 per game. His 499 rush yards are 38.3 per game. And he had on the ground a missed tackles forced per attempt number of 0.29. That's a pretty good number. And his YAC per attempt at 3.17 isn't particularly great, but I've seen worse. And his breakaway run percentage of 32.10% is a solid number as well, but not particularly dominant. Now, a couple of interesting tidbits I found on X per Johnny Tuma. Once again, this is contextualized among running backs. His 34% target rate was over 99th percentile. His 4.53 yards per out run versus man is over 99th percentile. His 3.8 yards per out run versus zone is over 98th percentile. His 14.4 first downs per out run is over 99th percentile. And his 8.5 YAC per reception is over 95th percentile as well. Insane numbers. Per Datarama, he comes out of college with the single highest yards per out run, 3.94 of any collegiate receiver since 2017. And as he's mentioned here, and as I'm going to mention, it's Navy's offense, so it's a little bit. It's not a traditional offense, which does lend itself to the big play, but still ridiculous numbers nonetheless. And I would very much agree that he is a very good target late in your dynasty drafts, especially considering a lot of people just aren't going to know who this guy is. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, Infamy MTG, AOYOB, The Dawn, and Any Buckeye. Thank you guys. I'm doing this full time now, and without your support, this would not be possible. If you'd like to become a member, I'm going to leave a link in both the comment section and description of this video. You'll receive not only, but including access to a Discord where we have a channel where we have NFL and college football talk, as well as a channel where we have fantasy football talk, and a third channel where we laugh at poor trade offers that we've been offered in fantasy football. But if you'd like to, you can always DM me with private, questions if you don't wish for it to be known by any community members. But you'll also get help with building your fantasy football teams every year. I'll use wins above replacement, as well as just looking at the general lineup and scoring settings to help you with your teams each year. I'll help you with trades that are advantageous based on those factors as well. You'll be part of a fun and growing active community. You'll not only receive access to videos early guaranteed, but you'll also have the ability to ask for personal videos that you and only you can view. Or potentially, if you'd like something to be shown on the channel, you'll have preferential treatment there as well. So please consider becoming a member. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video. Well, some highlights of his play. I'm going to read you a brief, around 2-minute synopsis of Eli Heidenreich. So Eli Heidenreich is a senior out of Navy who, depending on how you utilize him, can be a dynamic runner, but is absolutely a dynamic receiver, especially if you think of him as a running back. And has an insane blend of ability at both positions that we typically don't see from collegiate prospects. It's truly rare. As far as his speed and burst are concerned, I think he's reasonably fast as far as his long speed, but it isn't devastating, and faster 4.3 type athletes will catch up to him. His burst, however, isn't particularly great, but rather average, and I don't think that'll be a strength of his at the next level. But once again, it's fine. While he did some gap and zone running throughout his career, a lot of his production on the ground specifically came from trick plays and jet sweeps, as Navy runs a flexbone triple option offense, so it can definitely skew rushing stats, and he will definitely need to adjust to a pro-style offense in terms of cognitively understanding it, which I don't see any reason, as far as I know, as to why that would be an issue for him. But also getting just reps in traditional formations, which he just didn't. He has good vision on the ground and combines that with low pad level and physicality at the end of runs. Does love to try to power over and bully defenders, so smaller defenders might need to beware. But as far as being a receiver, he can run routes in the slot and the boundary, which primarily he ran seam routes, out of the slot, angle routes, rail routes out of the backfield, posts, go routes, and wheels. So not an extensive route tree exactly, but more of a vertical route tree, but it's multiple in that he was, lined up, in line at times in the slot or at the boundary. So very rare skill set in deployment that you just typically don't see. He also has fantastic hands and will pluck the ball out of the air, even in contested situations, which is backed up by his 72+% contested catch rate, which is bonkers. I think he'll best be utilized as a primary pass catching running back that can be motioned around the field as a slot or boundary receiver to take advantage of matchup situations with linebackers in particular, who also potentially receives a few runs per game, where I think he'll be less effective, but he can still utilize his vision and patience to move the chains, especially combine that with his physicality at the end of runs when necessary. And overall, he's just a dynamic chess piece that can be used all over the field, will be a dangerous third down back, a nightmare for linebackers. And if he lands with a creative offensive coordinator or head coach, such as a Ben Johnson, a Sean McVay, a Kyle Shanahan, I think this guy has the potential to be absolutely devastating. Now, in terms of his projected draft capital, as far as what we know right now, it's going to be anywhere from rounds 5 to 7. I don't think he'll be taken much sooner than that because he's kind of a guy that's flexible in terms of how you can utilize him and rare in his skill set for sure, but not a traditional type of player. And I don't think he fits in every offense. I think it's going to take a creative offensive mind, but I think an offensive mind that is creative can get a lot out of this guy. Once again, a brief summarization of his strengths and potential areas to improve upon. He has that wide receiver running back skill set. Um, you know, once again, didn't receive as many traditional, gap or zone runs as you would in a non-triple option flex bone offense, but still, he does have skills. He has great hands, as evidenced by his over 72% contested catch rate and catching the ball down the field away from his frame. Great route running, considering, in the routes in which he was asked to run, the seam routes, the wheel routes, rail routes, posts, zig routes as well. Pretty good. He has a low pad level as well when he finishes runs, finishes with a good bit of power for somebody that's not really that big as far as his BMI is concerned. Potential areas to improve upon. He does once again have a low BMI, 27.5. That's not very good as a running back. As a receiver, that's fine. College scheme, like I said, flex bone, triple option offense that Navy runs. He's going to have to adapt. I don't have any reason to doubt that he's going to be able to, but he is going to have to adapt to a pro style offense. And long speed acceleration, I think his long speed is better than his acceleration. It's kind of meh in my opinion. I think his skill set is more in his route running and his catching ability and his intelligence on the field rather than just being a tremendous athlete. But once again, testing 4.44 at the combine with, a kind of average burst score is fine enough if he's going to be one of these interesting players that's not used in a traditional role exactly. Now, in terms of a pro comparison, it's really hard. The best one, and once again, just for people watching these videos, when I have a pro comparison for somebody, I'm not saying that they're the same athlete. I'm not saying that they have literally every single skill to the T and that they're perfect player comparisons. There's going to be differences with basically everybody. It's really hard to find somebody that is a perfect representation of athleticism and skill set combined. Very difficult. But I think he's kind of like a Danny Woodhead, if you remember him back with the Chargers. I've seen James White as a comparison as well. I think that, the idea is a very, very advanced receiving profile for somebody that would come out as a running back prospect that can do some damage on the ground as well, but is very good in the third downs, good route runner, good hands, smart, high IQ player. I think that's a reasonable comparison. Danny Woodhead, if you think that's disrespectful, look at some of his stats from back in the day with the Chargers. Pretty impressive. As far as the projected dynasty community rank, it's hard to say. Depends on his landing spot. If he gets a bad landing spot with low draft capital, but if he gets a good landing spot with reasonably decent draft capital, he could potentially be ranked rather high, especially considering this running back class is brutal. Potential fits, basically any creative mind in terms of an offensive coordinator, but preferably an offensive-minded play-calling head coach. So that's why I think the 49ers, Rams, Bears, or Colts, it's Steichen, Johnson, McVay, or Shanahan would be great fits, but you can use your imagination. Anyone that's reasonably creative and gets the most out of their players. Where would I potentially take him? I think round 3 to 4 just depends kind of once again on the overall draft capital, especially the landing spot, the competition in the backfield, specifically, if they have any particularly good pass catching running backs that receive a good amount of usage on all 3 downs. So very wide range of outcomes here, but I do think that he has the potential to be one of the steals of this draft if he gets the draft capital that's decent, but even more so if he gets a good landing spot with a potential role for him as a third down dynamic receiving threat. Now, one thing I generally do, but I didn't do in this video, is rank him among the fellow wide receivers or running backs because he's just not a traditional player. I don't think he's going to be used traditionally. So that's pretty difficult. But like I said, I think I'd consider him in the 3rd round, 4th round. Just depends on, once again, the draft capital and landing spot. But an absolutely dynamic player. Once again, I don't like the transition from the triple option offense in which they ran at Navy to the pro style offense he's going to have to learn. But he seems like a pretty high IQ player to me. Definitely has talent as far as the route running and hands are concerned. One thing I didn't mention is he doesn't have a tremendous um, catch radius. His arms aren't particularly long, so that is one thing. But if he lands with a quarterback that has any semblance of accuracy and especially ball placement in particular, I think he's going to be very useful. So I think this guy has one of the widest range of outcomes imaginable as I'm, recording this video before the draft. I really hope he gets a good landing spot because I think this guy has the potential to be very valuable in terms of production compared to potential ADP in startups and especially in rookie drafts. So I think this guy should be somebody that's on your radar. If there's anything you think that I failed to mention that you think would be productive, let me know below in the comment section. What are your thoughts on him? Uh, I think he's just such an interesting player that we typically don't see too often, especially somebody out of Navy, that it's quite difficult to rank him among his peers. But let me know your opinions below. Once again, thank you to my Patreon members. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you for your support. If you would like to join, I'm going to leave the link in the description of the video. With all that being said, thanks, guys, and have a good day.